back to my channel. My name's Teigan. It's been a little while. I'm really sorry about that. Lots to explain. My hair's changed. Things have happened. This is the couple times I've tried to record this video now. It just hasn't gone quite right, so hopefully this time's the lucky one. It's going to be quite a long one because the books are now completion of the books I read in September and October, which I didn't read that many in October. It just kind of grew, so we'll get right into this, starting off with the Sandman. I think the simplest way I can put this is if you like horror, if you like spooky shit, if you enjoy comics, because it is a comic, doesn't look like it, but it is indeed a comic, you know, I would recommend the Sandman. I had no idea what I was getting into it. I'm still not that far into it, I will be honest. I think I'm on the 6th or 7th comic now, but the progression of the story has been really fun, really interesting. I need to read it again, or I need to read more of it. It's been a little while, so I'm sorry if my chatting of it isn't actually that great, but it's such a pretty cover. Right, we'll start off with one. Alright, this one obviously wants to be talked about first. Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett. While this isn't it's not one of my favourites, I don't dislike it. I was just very confused by this story. Now, I absolutely love Terry Pratchett. He's rapidly become one of my favourite authors with his absurd world in the Discworld. It's fantastic. While this book in particular confused me, the MVPs are the witches, obviously, you know, in this book is absolutely fantastic. You know, the story, I just was kind of, it was very much I was along for the ride without knowing where this ride was going, where we were stopping or what was happening, but I still enjoyed it all the same. You know, I think that's purely based on like the characters that Pratchett writes. Obviously, I said the witches are absolutely hilarious, but also like the Duke King and his wife, reading their moments was brilliant, and he's very good at writing absurdity and it making sense, more so in other books than I think in this one. I still enjoyed it. I still would recommend Terry Pratchett. Maybe not, if you're going to read Terry Pratchett, maybe don't read one of his very first books. Start somewhere like Mort, with either, well, Mort as in like the death kind of books. The Witches are a good book too, as well as any Guards books. They are, I'd say, my absolute favourites. Quickly touch on Midnight Sun. I read it, it's done. There will be a video. I'm just glad it's over. I finished the kind of main 4 books, I believe it is, with the Lunar Chronicles, and I absolutely adored this series. While I think is absolutely fantastic, I think what I love the most is how, while it is still a fairy tale retelling, it's not specifically just about the fairy tales. The books stand alone by themselves completely. I think it's just like, I like how it's just got the little elements of the fairy tales. You know, I think the pacing in this book was brilliant. There were moments that, you know, I genuinely had no idea which way it was going to swing with the plot. I think that's just a really good writing. The writing as well is just so digestible. I can fly through these books really quickly. I only had a couple of issues, and I'm going to say this in the most non-spoiler way possible. Well, the thing with Cinder at the end of the book, with the way how she handles kind of the resolution of the story, didn't understand why, considering everything she kind of knew going into this, than the way she reacted the way she did. I didn't quite understand. As well as the thing that happens with Wolf throughout this book, didn't understand that either. You know, let me know your guys' thoughts down below. Yeah, I think that was the only thing I found a bit off with this book, but you know, still the dynamics between the characters are great. You know, the emotions, the action was interesting. You know, I had moments where I was generally, you know, worried about characters. I have quite a few books to get through, so I think I'm just worried about not talking fast enough, but also still being interesting. An Unkindness of Magician. I really enjoyed this story. I think my only issue that I had with this book, I'm talking too much about the negatives. This is a really great story, she says, while then not being able to explain why. And this is why you should take better notes. I think the characters were very complex and compelling. They were really fun to, again, fun in the sense of not fun, interesting. They were interesting. I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed it for reasons I can barely describe, but my issue with it is that I wish it just had slowed down its pacing a bit. I think it moved on too quickly from here's one thing that's happening and now this is happening, now this thing's happened, and it didn't give you time to properly digest what was occurring. I think that was my only complaint. I think the story and the way the magic is run in this society is really interesting, and I'm really excited for there to be a continuation in this story to see what happens kind of next with these characters. Gonna do a bit of a quick fire. Next one I'm going to talk about is holes. Now with this book, I think the best way I can sum it up is it was more than what I was expecting. I would say that it's going to be odd considering it's a fiction book written for, you know, the younger audience, but I wish it was more realistic in... I know it sounds weird, it's a strange complaint to have because it's, you know, it's a fictional story with a fictional world, but I think it was trying to be too much like a realistic world, but yet what was happening just didn't vibe, I guess. Again, just actually quickly going back to my very poor description of Unkindness of Magician, while they, again, targeted for a completely different audience, and I get that, but I think the way that the fantastical, don't think that's a word, but fantastical elements, great, this is going great, while the fantastical elements of this book just seem to meld really well because it's not a book it's a book based in the real world, kind of. I wish this book had done that. I still really enjoyed it. I wish I'd read it when I was younger. I feel like I wouldn't have so many holes to pick through it if I'd read it when I was younger. Yeah, but it was more than what I was expecting from this book, and I still really enjoyed it. We then have Shatter Me, and I, again, absolutely loved this book. What I can say, I think, is that I would recommend listening to it in the audiobook, because the audiobook is absolutely fantastic. Don't listen to it when you're trying to sleep, because I got to chapter 4, and if you don't know what chapter 4 is, read it, but I tend to listen to audiobooks at 2 times speed, and basically the first page of chapter 4 is like 50 times the word "I am not insane," and to be, you know, kind of chilled out, listen to the book, for that to suddenly blare through your ears was rather concerning, slightly strange experience, but I think that particular page in the book, the voice actor who read the book out was absolutely, she killed it, absolutely. I'm really excited to read the next book and see where the story goes. The development of the main character, Juliet, from, you know, the very first kind of meeting of her to the end of the book is night and day in a good way. A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. I was really looking forward to reading this, and I don't know if you can tell by my voice and my expression, I was disappointed by this book. Not because it is bad, it just missed the mark for me in the sense that nothing particularly happened in the book. Plot-wise, you get more time with the characters, which is great, but I just wish there was an underlying plot or a hint of a plot to get excited for the next book. The only thing about this book is that Nesta's getting on my nerves. She's becoming mildly insufferable and a bit brattish. You know, I was just expecting more from this book, I think is the best way to put it. It's my least favourite of the series. I get that it's a novella, so it wouldn't be, you know, huge plot things, but I just wish there was a plot, apart from Nesta's being a bitch. Quick thing with this series as well that I'm kind of disappointed about is that they've decided to completely change the cover art. Now, while that is absolutely fine, I wish they would still release the new book with this cover purely for the fans that had collected these covers, like certain people, and now have the option to either just not buy the new book, which I'm really tempted to do, or buy the entire series again, because I can't not have matching sets. I wish it feels a bit more money grab-ish, I think. Same as I think for this book, in general, it seems a bit money grab-ish, because I think the scenes that occurred in this book could have just been cut down a bit and put into the series itself. That's my thoughts. Agatha Christie, Murder at the Vicarage. I am still quite new to murder mysteries, so whether this is just me being new and not knowing how the genre works, I'm not blown away by it. I enjoyed it. It was, you know, it was a murder that was mysterious, that we then, you know, get to solve with the story. What I was expecting from Miss Marple was the book to be in the perspective of Miss Marple, but it is not. This particular book is the vicar from the vicarage who gets caught up in the murder. Now, I don't think that's a particularly bad thing that we don't get to see the inner workings of Miss Marple's mind, but I would have liked to. And yeah, I just kind of expected more from her. She was just kind of almost like a background character. Maybe she's supposed to be, and maybe it's because this is just the very first book with Miss Marple as an appearance. I'm not sure. And again, the actual murder elements I enjoyed. It was you know, you could actually, there wasn't any omittance of information, I don't think, as so much with and then there were none, which I was glad it didn't have that. Again, I'm going to keep reading Agatha Christie because I do enjoy, they're nice quick books to read through. I just don't know if murder mystery is my thing or if Agatha Christie is just not my thing. I'll keep reading her and see how she says. But speaking of murder mysteries, One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. I really enjoyed this book. Didn't expect to. That sounds really harsh. I bought this book not knowing what to expect. With the title, I was expecting it to be very stereotypical, and I think it was a very good marketing ploy because it doesn't. It starts off very stereotypical, but as it develops, you come to get to know the characters better and to know that they're not so stereotypical. And the murder mystery kind of elements I thought were very interesting. I really enjoyed it. Almost like, I would even say the characters are relatable to a teenager. It was just very bingeable. I think it was really easy to get through, very quick read, a very YA. It's a good book, I recommend it. We'll move on to my second absurd, basically, my brain thinks of it as Terry Pratchett in space. It's not, it's its own thing. It's not like it's copying Terry Pratchett. It's just absurd fantasy in a sci-fi. And the best way I can describe it, it was hilarious. This book, the interactions between characters, freaking amazing. I have no idea what happened in this book at all, or why. I don't get it. I've read this book. I still couldn't tell you what happened. I was really confused. It's weird, but it's still a really good read. So take that as you will. Shall I move then on to Charmcaster by Sebastian de Castell. Now this series, I don't know what to call this series. The Spellslinger series, I suppose. I really enjoyed the first book. Reading the second book, I had not fallen out of love, wrong words, but it just didn't grab me and it didn't make me want to continue reading the series, and that's why it took so long for me to read the third book. However, I am really glad I did, because while the beginning was, again, it was kind of still had that dragging of the whatever went wrong with the second book, for me, it dragged a little bit at the beginning, but once it kind of got into the meat of its own plot, it really grabbed my attention again. Kind of Kellen, the main character's development in this book, is fantastic. I think the elements that he has added into the story are, it makes it more exciting. It's not just the same problems with the same people. It's, there is development and the world is changing. Yeah, I just think it's a stronger book than the second one, and it's making me excited to read and continue. Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. That's the author of this book. I really would like to know, especially from you guys, what your opinions were of this book if you had read it before the movies come out, because I think that has been my issue, is that I've watched the movies before, and the books, it's a compliment to the movies that they play very closely aligned with the books, because I wasn't disappointed by this book. I just kind of was like, okay, yeah, it's the same as the films. It's not great, it's not bad, it's okay, it's an okay book. So for those who were disappointed by it, I would really like to know why, in the sense of, what were you expecting from the series to be disappointed by this? Because I think by watching the film, I had a certain expectation and just met it, rather than being disappointed by it. Magic Thief. Home. This was the reread of kind of the past couple months. I read this back when I was like 12 or 13, and it probably took me down like memory lane. I think I remember this. I was reading this on holiday in France, this particular book, so I think it's just great to kind of go back into reading that. And you know, the characters in this book are so endearing. You fall in love with them. Like Con, the main character, you fall in love with him. You want him to, you know, be happy and have peace in his life. And obviously, you know, you can't have that because he's a protagonist in a book. So he, you know, he has to go through certain trials. And I really enjoyed how this book kind of ends. I really enjoy the way she lets the characters interact. I think that's a big thing on how I enjoy books, is the characters' interaction. Probably most people's, honestly. I think it's such an easy, digestible book. Really good for I think a younger audience. Oh, it's written in mind for the younger audience. Not saying that adults couldn't enjoy it. And I think if you're in the mood for something, you know, fun and just easy to read, something a nice story with a, you know, nice little ending, fun characters, I think The Magic Thief is a series you should definitely pick up. Don't know if I don't think I'm giving this book enough praise. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong. I think there's only one element that I didn't like, but it's a spoiler. So, spoiler warning for the next 10 seconds. I wish they didn't reuse the same antagonist, basically. And that's about it. That's my only complaint. Wheel of Time, Book 2, The Great Hunt. I loved this book. I really enjoyed the development of the kind of this plot-wise, story-wise, what's going to happen with Rand. The development with the Aes Sedai has been really interesting, and it has left me very excited to read the third book. I'm really glad I picked up the Wheel of Time series. I was very intimidated by the size, but I was like, fuck it, let's do it. So I'm glad I have. It's been a really, I wish, I'm not describing this properly or saying it in the right way. I kind of wish I could have read it when everyone else started to read it, but I think I would have been too young. When did this book come out? And the first published, I wasn't even born when it was first published. This edition was published in 2014, so, you know, I was around then. I was young. Anyway, the world that Robert Jordan has created has been really fun to just dive into, because you do dive into it head first. It's a good book. Good characters, good book, read it. And we're going on to my questionably my favourite author of all time, Brandon Sanderson. I've read The Way of Kings, which is the first book/books in the Stormlight archive. Now, book 1, part 1, which is this part, I didn't expect to enjoy it because I thought I didn't like war stories because of, but with my experience of kind of the inheritance cycle, I didn't expect to enjoy the war. I didn't realise it was so heavily focused on war with The Way of Kings. And yet, that being said, I have been loving this series. I say series, it's the first books. It did take me a good while to get into it, I think. It, again, like Brandon kind of just like throws you in head first and you just kind of have to start swimming. I think once you get to know the characters, once you kind of start to get a grip of the story on what's happening and why things are happening, and then, you know, when everything starts to come together, you're getting really excited. And I'm not gonna lie, it's what, over a week now into November. I've already finished now book 1 of the Words of Radiance, so I'll be starting part 2 soon. I'm burning through this series because it's so good. It's big, it's a lot, you know, but it's really interesting. I really like how, again, I think it's just the elements of all, when you first start reading it, it just seems like all these different things that are occurring don't seem to match up at all, but it does eventually all come together. And I think reading through that and watching it come together is amazing, and a really good test to Brandon's writing. Speaking of, I kind of broke a rule, but not really, because it's 2 months technically. This is 2 months worth of books. Starsight, the sequel to Skyward from Brandon Sanderson. I finally got my hands on it after finding out that it wasn't actually not published, just the particular book I didn't. Like, it was first published in 2019 apparently, but this paperback was published in 2020 because I pre-ordered this and it arrived last month. But I finally got a hand of it, I read it, I burnt through it. I burnt through it too quickly because now I want more. I really loved Spencer's progression in this story. I loved the direction that he went, because at the end of Skyward it was very open on which way he was going to go, and I think, yeah, the trajectory, that's not how you say that word. Trajectory. I can't say it. The way it goes, I think it was really great, and I'm using the same words to describe this book, but great is what I can just say. I really enjoyed it. I love this series. I love Brandon Sanderson's stories, and I'm so glad that he comes out with them so often, because I'm falling in love with these books. The last book I'm going to talk about, real quick, is another author that I am growing to absolutely adore, is Leigh Bardugo, and this is The Ninth House. This book in particular I was really intrigued by, because I like how she mixes fiction with fact. I don't know if you guys know, but Leigh Bardugo actually went to Yale, which is the kind of setting of this book. So it's really, again, I think it's another done well version of mixing that fantasy elements with real life. How she kind of melds them together. And I don't know what you call them in America, like the groups that you have in universities, not fraternities, I think that's a different thing, but it's like the clubs. So sorry about that, but apparently she actually, the clubs that are mentioned in the books are actual clubs in Yale. So I really liked how it is just the kind of melding of the fictional world that she's created in the real world, and kind of the story that she creates with that is lovely. Not lovely, because it's not bunnies and flowers and rainbows. The story that she tells within this world was enchanting. I was captivated the entire time. The main character, the secrets that you slowly discover over time, is all written so well. And so far, everything that I've read from Leigh, I've adored. So I'm excited to read more from her. And with that, I think that's pretty much my books caught up with. It's been a little while since I've, like I said, it's been a little while since I've made a video. I think I'm going to keep this recording. I'm sorry if there's audio issues or anything. I've just recorded this video so much now. I feel like each time I'm either missing something out or adding it, so I'm sorry if it's not a great video, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I have missed making videos, so hoping to make another one soon. In fact, I will make another one soon. I'll make one about my TBR for November that I've already started, because everything's always late with me. This is September/October. Anyway, with that all being said, how did you like my hair? It's now blue. With that being said, love you guys' faces. Not that I ever see them, but I look forward to chatting with you guys, and yeah, have a great day. I think I'm gonna go to bed.